Please welcome John Elliott, designer, John Elliott, and Alex Badia, fashion director, men's, WWD.
So before we start, I just want to congratulate you. He just got nominated for a CFDA Swarovski Award, so congratulations.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much, and also thank you for having me. Tremendous honor.
We know how to choose them. So tell me a little bit about you, and quickly tell us how you got into fashion.
Yeah, I was born in San Francisco, California, and basically, starting my own company has been a goal since I was really a child. When I was really, really young, I guess I was identified in like the second grade as someone who's extremely dyslexic. Okay. And I didn't really, of course, at that time grasp what that means. But I think the cool outcome of it was that in certain areas where I struggled, there was kind of the reverse of that. And there was other areas where I excelled. And those were kind of in the arts. And when I was quite young, I would find myself sketching sneakers in class, and I came home and my mom really encouraged me to send those sneakers to Nike. And I grew up playing basketball and skateboarding.
What did Nike, what happened?
Nike responded, actually, and that leather back kind of became
I never saw that. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it's right there. So that kind of became like a cherished, heirloom from my childhood. And, like I was saying, I grew up in San Francisco in the 90s during kind of like the golden era of do-it-yourself startup culture of skateboard companies starting between friends. And from a very young age, I kind of had this idea that I could start my own company.
So how do you get into fashion?
Well, I kind of went to my dad and devised this plan to really learn the ins and outs of the industry. So I went to my favorite store and basically begged them for a job. I started on the floor just selling clothes and worked my way up. I became the buyer, and then from the buyer I started my own shop, and then eventually went and did wholesale, and really kind of tried to not only save money, but also try and learn the ins and outs of the industry, try and learn it with my hands.
So from wholesale to opening your store, when did your own company, how do you decide, do you have like an aha moment where you're like, oh my God, this is what happened?
Yeah, I was in actually New York City. I was taking the train back from Boston, and I had about $15,000 saved, and I was waiting in a cab line at Penn Station, and it started to pour. And I think I was looking at about an hour and a half wait, and I just kind of, really put my life into context and decided at that moment, you know what? It's better now than never. So I called up my best friend, my lifelong tutor from when I was a child, and said, hey man, I've got $15,000 saved up. You want to meet me halfway and go for this? And at that time I was also living on his floor.
Wait a minute. What is that?
That is a picture from junior prom.
So you've known each other that long? Is that Aaron?
That's Aaron. Yeah, that's my business partner.
Oh my God, your suit is out of control.
Yeah, you like that, right?
Yes.
It's good.
So tell me about the different roles that you guys have.
Yeah, so, I basically am like the lead creative, the designer. I basically live at my factory. Aaron, I would say, by all intents and purposes, is the CEO, CFO. We kind of have two different roles. Like I think the front of the house is what you see during New York Fashion Week, and the back of the house is what keeps our business running, which is kind of operating like a tech startup.
So what year was this?
We started. I basically started working on the company in 2011. We formed the company in 2012. 2013, January, we delivered our first product. So just a little bit over 3 years we've been in existence.
That's remarkable. When do you realize you were getting traction, that something was happening?
I think it was probably right after our first delivery. We had just delivered product to a store here in New York City, and there was no Instagram account, no reason for knowing who we are. And we had two products that I really believed in. That one was a side zip crew neck that concealed an interior kangaroo pocket, and a very slim pair of kind of athletic inspired sweatpants. And they had sold out in 2 weeks, and they called us for a reorder, and I said, "Are you sure?" And we realized at that moment that we had something pretty special.
So in 2014, you got a phone call from GQ saying they wanted to be part of the best American designer sort of program. And what happened then?
Yeah, that was a moment I'll never forget. And Mr. Jim Moore called me, and still that's like God calling you, for me at least. And
Okay.
I think that initiative really kind of straps your business to a rocket ship. And the thing that I'm really proud of is, as a startup that really could potentially be deemed as like underfunded from the jump, we've kind of always risen to the occasion. We celebrated that night and then went back to work the next morning and said, okay, here's this opportunity. What do we need to do to really capture this opportunity?
So then you decide to have your first runway show.
Right.
Why
right.
do you decide to do your runway show at such an early stage?
Well, that was kind of I say attributed to Aaron and I's relationship. I take great pride in the trust that is built there, and I think that there's definitely a balance between looking at analytics, looking at sell-through, looking at numbers, and also like a gut feeling. And at summer 2014, we definitely were not in a place where it made sense for us to financially, I guess, gamble on the runway show. But I started to have this idea that was beginning to kind of infect my mind that, I think there's going to be a lot of energy in New York for that, New York Fashion Week. It coincides with All-Star Weekend. I reached back out to Nike, and they were, receptive to doing. Yeah, well, no, but I reminded them, and they were receptive to, putting footwear on the runway,
Yes.
and sure enough, we were able to make a little bit of noise.
I remember that day. I mean, my colleague Jean and my team we got a phone call. They said, "Oh, there's this designer, John Elliott. You have to go. There's so many shows," but we just went. And I remember we get there. There's a mob scene at the door, and we're like, "What is going on?" And then I remember I see all the NBA players, and I see Kanye West walk in, and you're like, what is this? And I remember, if you know Kanye West, I mean, I don't know him, but he's always like making some kind of show. So the show is about to start. He's talking to someone. He loses his front row seat, and you think he's gonna leave, but no, he goes and sits behind Jim Palmieri. Remember? And I was like, oh my God, he's not leaving. He's staying for this. And then the show ends, and he stands up and claps. And then we go backstage. I think we have a picture of that, and it's crazy. And then Gene and I, we need to get to know this guy. What's happening? What happened?
Yeah,
and how do you get Kanye West to come?
That's a good question. That he and I kind of just had become mutual acquaintances. We actually met at a gym, believe it or not, and rode a stationary bike for like an hour and a half and just talked. It was awesome. But I think the thing about that show that was really cool is that there was great energy there, and I like to use that show to liken it to a music analogy. Is that was maybe like our first EP. And I felt a lot of pressure because, Mr. West, who's such an important cultural figure, and, yourself and, Bergdorf Goodman, Bruce Pask, like there was a lot of people who came to that show, and there was a lot of buzz around that show, and I felt a great responsibility to kind of validate that buzz.
What about the second show?
Well, yeah, so the second show was kind of an idea that I had brewing for a long time. As a company, we're a company that kind of tells like a layered story. At our core, we're a basics company, but I think we innovate and we tell a very dynamic story is through textures and layered textures. So I had this idea to go to Vietnam and to run through Vietnam for a period of time. So I went to Ho Chi Minh and Hanoi to really kind of understand and do research on like a pale palette. And that was kind of like our first album, and I love that album. It's in stores now and it's doing well.
Well, running in Vietnam gave you a CFDA nomination, so
yeah,
it's a good idea. So I remember you and I first time after that day we met, and you told me that you not only started a business company, you started a technology startup, and I couldn't really understand it back then. But can you elaborate on that, please?
Yeah. So I think from our first season onward, we've been in a little bit of survival mode. I mean, not so much right now, but I can remember when we were first starting, and to start a company with $30,000 is ambitious to say the least. But I think, what it forced us to do is really learn on the fly. And I saw this interview with Bernard Hopkins, a boxer from Philadelphia who had served time in prison. And he discussed kind of this idea of prison innovation and how prisoners innovate with nothing. And so myself and Aaron took this and really took it to heart. We started with 3 fabrics: jersey, French terry, and denim. And we tried to create products that matter out of those 3, fabrications. And the goal has always been to keep our business at a very balanced level. So in order for our business to run, we need to basically maintain a balance between about 40% brick and mortar wholesale and 60% online. So, we've been forced to really understand, utilize, and grow our direct to consumer, base.
What about communication to your consumer? That's something that you've spoken to me about before as well.
Yes. So, one thing that I think is interesting is when we first started, we kind of got looped into this form. And, a form is almost something that is like a little bit of a fashion faux pas, like that doesn't sound cool at all. But what it
AOL.
Yeah, exactly. But what it actually did was it created a layer of transparency between the brand and our customer. And it also helped cultivate a cult. So now we communicate with our customers on a daily basis through Instagram, and then also through this forum where we have a moderator, and we basically can explain decisions that we're making. Like, to put it into context, as we grow, 90% of our business, of our clothing, is manufactured in LA, and I pretty much live in the factory. But 10% of our stuff is manufactured overseas because, quite honestly, there are better hands, in China for technical pieces. And so on the forum, kids will say, "Hey, this is made in China," like, I saw the tag, kind of call us out. And the truth is that, if you buy that piece and you wear it over time and you realize that, the quality is actually better and the price is actually better as well, then you have advocates going to bat for the fact that this is actually made in China and I trust these guys. And it builds in an extra layer of trust while also kind of educating the customer. So it's been extremely effective for us.
So you say that 60 or 65% of your business is online on your website and 35% is in wholesale.
Right, and I'm probably trending towards 70-30, yeah.
So what is your wholesale strategy?
To stay exactly where we're at. 50 stores.
So you want to control your business, basically 70% of your business, 65, whatever it is, you want to just completely control it.
Yeah, I mean, I think right now we're in some of the best retailers in the world. And some of the best retailers in the world are in this room as well. So I don't want to, say anything wrong, but
yeah, Tom is right there.
But I think that basically our goal is to work with experts who can tell a story. I'd rather go deeper with the best stores in the world than spread out and really risk having our brand just be on the table or on the rack without a story behind it.
Well, because you're here, you do shows, you talk to the press, you obviously care about the feedback of the insider.
Absolutely. I think that, as we grow, we want to try to always maintain balance. We want to tell a balanced story. We want to make sure that we're not only creating products that matter, but we're also marketing them in an interesting way to, our consumer whose range is between, 18 to 45.
So, 65% of your business is online. You have a forum that you talk to your consumer every day. And then you've said to me that you drop product every now and then. You have an idea about a sweatshirt. It takes 2 weeks to manufacture. Boom, from a sketch to a website, 2 to 3 weeks. Is that true?
Yeah, that is true. So, I think one thing that is kind of like an advantage that we have is the fact that, I basically, like I said, live in the factory. And I'm also, I think, our consumer. I'm growing with the product just like our consumers are growing with the products. And
are you the consumer?
I think I am the consumer, yes. About 3 months ago, I had an idea like, oh my God, I would love an oversized crop sweatshirt right now with rib that could kind of frame my face, almost like, take a mock neck approach to a pullover. And you know what? I sat there, I sketched it. The next day, we worked on the tech pack. The following day, we had the sample. And then 2 weeks later, we had the sweatshirt, and let's test it. And it sold out in about 3 minutes. And I think that, that's the speed at which our customer is reacting to product. If there's an idea, you can get it out that fast, and it's something that's culturally relevant, it's seasonally relevant, and they're looking for it, you can take advantage of the market.
And then you can tell what they think of the sweatshirt, right? Because did they tell you?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, it did quite well, and it became an item that kids hunt for, and then it also becomes a discussion piece as well.
Do you think so? When in that forum, do you talk about fashion, or is it a talk of lifestyle? Is it a talk about what?
Well, I think there's a balance. I think that one thing that we strive to do is not only just create products and get it out fast, but also tell deep stories and innovate with textiles. So I think that there's like an educational component as well. Mm-hmm. I travel to Japan probably 4 times a year and work with several Japanese mills, specifically knitting mills in Wakayama, Japan. And I was just meeting with this gentleman named Mr. Okazaki, and he owns Okazaki Knits, and he was saying that one of the most important things biggest challenges to our industry as the industry becomes more fast-paced is honoring old traditions and making sure that the product doesn't suffer as the industry speeds up. So to me, that's like the great challenge, is how do you still develop beautiful products but get them out fast.
Will you open a flagship store?
I would love to, absolutely. Coming from a retail background and coming from someone who understands experience and understands how important it is to incorporate the 5 senses or 6 senses into experience, mm-hmm. I think that it's something that I would definitely be curious about and definitely like to explore.
You talked to me about the importance of smartphones as a tool to shop. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I think that as my generation continues to like evolve and change, and the world really is evolving and changing, I think that me personally, I find myself doing about 90% of my business through my phone. Mm-hmm. And I don't really watch music videos on my phone anymore. I don't really watch any type of long video on my phone. However, I will accept small bits. I will accept small clips. I will shop on my phone. I would say that I'm probably 60-40. I still shop 60% of the time online, and then 40% of the time I like to have an experience. But the challenge is how do you cater your business now to your phone? How do you tell a story about a product that you should care about, a product that is relevant, a product that's well made and comes from potentially a knitting mill in Wakayama, Japan, and connect that with a kid in a very short period of time? So that's kind of what our next frontier is.
To sell on the phone.
To sell through the phone, exactly.
Well, now you know. I think we don't have time for anything else, but thank you so much. We're going to open questions to the audience.
Thank you so much.
Please welcome.
No.
So the aesthetic that you created is pretty popular now. So do you feel the pressure to innovate on top of that, and do you pay attention to what other brands do?
Good question.
That's a great question. I think it's impossible to not know what the market is, not know what's going on in the market, but I really try to just continue to solve my own problems with my closet. I think that if I can understand what I want and what our customer is looking for, then we continue to lead. If I veer off and start to look at what other brands are doing and what's becoming popular at the moment, then you risk kind of jumping on something that potentially isn't something that is authentic to you, and not only alienating your base, but also potentially making a very risky move in terms of what you're investing in.
Congratulations, Sean. I'm really very happy to be here with you tonight.
Thank you. Be you as well.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask you a quick question about your perspective on how you view your business. Is it based on your personal feelings and the generation that you're gearing towards? And if so, how will you evolve in the future as you evolve, as we all will change as we grow older? And do you think about decades from now what your brand will mean to other generations?
Absolutely. Another great question. And I think that, thinking about legacy and thinking about something that is in the future, for me, I'm at my core a collector. So the way that I started the brand was I used to collect APC Butler jeans, the jeans that APC started where they would buy back like basically worn-in jeans. And I found a woman who she was basically her and her husband were doing the laundry for the California state penal systems. And so I scoured through boxes and, we'd go through and find the perfectly washed down, altered prison t-shirts. And then I was a collector of Champion sweatshirts and tubular knit sweatshirts. And I think that those things are the things that I've carried with me, whether I move, whether I, change locations, change cities. Those are things that I've always had with me. And I think that our goal is to make products that are relevant to guys. At our core, like I said, we're a basics company. And I want to make sure that our basics are things that literally guys in our generation could pass down to their children. So, while the industry moves fast and while we all are challenged to grow, at the end of the day, it's all about the product and making sure that product lasts over time. And I believe that if you can do that, then you'll have a brand that resonates, for years and years to come.
So you grew up in San Francisco. You decided to start your company in the rain in New York, and you're now based in LA. Is your line driven by the West Coast aesthetic? And what is that? How would you describe that?
I don't think it is driven by the West Coast aesthetic. I think it might be driven by a West Coast mentality. Kind of this idea that you can, create a company with $30,000. Like I said, it's definitely an ambitious starting point. But I think that the aesthetic is very universal. When I look at my group of friends, or I look at who I am or what I'm attracted to, I think we want to be a global company and not necessarily be pigeonholed into one location, but rather embody that kind of free-spirited, let's go for it mentality that was San Francisco in the 90s, during that kind of skateboarding era.